In accordance with Governance Rules 24.10, in order to move the next motion, I will vacate the chair to the Deputy Mayor, Councillor Anthony Tran, who will act as chair until the conclusion of this motion. Councillor Tran, I hand the chair to you.
Thank you very much. I'll take the chair. I call for Councillor Michael Clark to move a motion in regard to agenda item 10.1.
Thank you, Chair. Much appreciated. Councillors, I'll move an amended motion to agenda item 10.1. I'll read the motion. That Maribyrnong City Council, acknowledgement 1, acknowledges the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people never ceded sovereignty of their lands and have continuously cared for their country for over 60,000 years as the world's oldest living culture. 2, acknowledges that the first contact between the Wurundjeri Woiwurrung and Europeans occurred in 1835 and is recognised in the treaty and truth elements of the Uluru Statement from the Heart and the Apology of 13 February 2008 to the Stolen Generation by the then Prime Minister Kevin Rudd, further acknowledges the past mistreatment and profound grief, suffering and loss on these our fellow Australians that colonisation and dispossession had and continues to have on Aboriginal people. 3, acknowledges that Maribyrnong City Council's history of reconciliation through action began in 1992 with the support of the Koori Gardening Team and continues through the implementation of the Reconciliation Action Plan, brackets, the RAP. Recognition through action. Point 4. In acknowledging the suffering experienced by Australia's Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people as recognised in the treaty and truth elements of the Uluru Statement from the Heart and the grief and loss experienced by the Stolen Generation, flies the Aboriginal flag at half-mast on January 26 from 2022 onwards. 5, in order to validate Council's commitment to Aboriginal initiated and led projects, that Council supports and acknowledges the priority of Aboriginal projects within the City of Maribyrnong in the 2021 round of Council Community Grants Program. Heading Community Engagement. 6, that Council engages in a broad-ranging and deliberative consultations process with the First Nations and the wider established and newly arrived people of Maribyrnong. The intent of this clear community engagement process is to assist the sitting councillors in generating a clear direction on how the Maribyrnong City Council should respond to 26th January. 7, in response to the treaty and truth elements of the Uluru Statement from the Heart and in support of the treaty process commenced by the State of Victoria, that Maribyrnong City Council stands in solidarity with all 3 language groups on which Maribyrnong City Council local government area sits as their traditional lands, in contributing to the truth-telling process under the auspice of the Victorian State Government's soon-to-be-established U-Rooch Justice Commission. Councillors, I commend the motion to you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Clark. I call for a seconder to the motion. Councillor Lamb. Are there any questions or points of clarification from any of the councillors?
I just had one very minor one.
Mm-hmm.
Is it stolen generation or is it stolen generations plural?
I think it's plural as well.
I think it might be plural.
Stolen
I
generations.
just want to make sure we've got it right.
I think it's
But
plural. I think you're right.
I think it's referred to as plural, isn't it? Yeah, that's all.
Thank you, and happy to accept the that adjustment. Thank you, Councillor Thomas.
Councillor O'Carroll.
While we're on small points, well, it's actually not small, but it's something we should have picked up, all of us. Point 2, after dispossession had and continues to have on Aboriginal, and it should read and Torres Strait Islander people.
Yes.
Where are you?
On Aboriginal people and
Point
Torres
two.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, sorry.
That was a good
Yeah.
pickup. That's a very good pickup.
Good pick up.
Councillors, any other points?
Aboriginal and
Torres-
Torres Strait Islander people.
Yes,
Must be.
and Torres Strait Islander. Thank you,
I know we didn't pick up on
Councillor Ojeda.
Good pick up.
Okay. Would the mover like to speak to the motion?
I would. Thank you, Chair. Councillors, firstly, let me thank Councillor Ojeda for raising the question of Maribyrnong City Council's response to the question of 26 January, and more importantly, our engagement with our Aboriginal people as part of the reconciliation process, and of course our engagement with the broader community on this matter. Councillors, I highlight Maribyrnong City Council's response as something quite distinct because, councillors, it's only our jurisdiction and it's our community that we need to attend to. To this end, councillors, I do want to thank all councillors who've been involved in this notice of motion. In short, councillors, thank you all so much. Whilst I also want to thank the broader community, including Friends of Crookshank Park, the children and school captains of Footscray North Primary, Frederick Madden, our newly acknowledged Citizens of the Year, Lola and Peter Anderson, just to name a few. I also particularly want to thank members of the Aboriginal community, who I'll speak to shortly, who have participated in the consultations process. Councillors, whilst much of this motion is an acknowledgement of what the Aboriginal people here in Maribyrnong have been subject to as part of what is acknowledged, what we're trying to do, councillors, is put together a response that really rests on 4 pillars. Firstly, councillors, to lower the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander flags at half-mast, to recognise the dispossession, suffering and hurt experienced by Aboriginal people. We'll do this on 26th January, and I say we do this on 26th January as there's no other day that the federal government has set aside as a sorry day, quite simply. While 26th January recognises Australia Day, and which is a day of celebration, until the federal government identifies an appropriate date as a sorry day, Council will also recognise this day as a day when we shall remember the hurt and dispossession foisted upon the Aboriginal people, and we will do this through the lowering of these flags. Secondly, in our community grants program, councillors, we will acknowledge the priority of Aboriginal initiated and led projects in our city. In this way, it will be the local Aboriginal people that will identify priorities for action as they see them, not we, the white fellas. Councillors, thirdly, this council will consult with the broader established and newly arrived community and the Aboriginal people on how we as a city should respond to 26 January. Councillors, we do this because although we believe we know the community's views on this matter, we have no real evidence to support such a position. So, councillors, we shall ask, and as difficult as it might be, we shall ask, and sadly, councillors, what we might hear is not necessarily what we want to hear. I've got to say, councillors, I'd prefer that we don't do this. Clearly, this is a Commonwealth responsibility. However, councillors, while the Commonwealth chooses to be defensive and avoidant on this matter, we here must respond to the concerns of the community. We actually don't have the luxury, councillors, of being avoidant. As to how and why we should engage the Aboriginal community, I really want to thank To start with Mr Ian Ham, Yorta man, social commentator. Belinda Durate, a Wodja Bullock woman, former Deputy Chair of Reconciliations Victoria. Annette Sachs, a Tunnerong woman. Bob Williams, a Gagajoo man. And of course, Senator Lydia Thorpe, a Gunai Gunjamara woman. She helped us quite a bit, councillors. To quote Bob Williams, a Gagajoo man, we need to observe protocols, councillors. We need to talk to the traditional owners. As Annette Sachs said to us, we don't want decisions, we want to yarn.
Councillor, I was at its time.
Councillor, can I seek Council's indulgence just to speak for a few more moments on this matter of social import to Council?
Yep,
Councillors?
support
And
that.
the City, thank you. Councillors, Belinda Durate, and she is one of the directors at the Bulldogs Football Club. She was very clear. Her words were, we need to involve our local mob. Senator Lydia Thorpe, she was equally clear, saying that we needed elder sign-off and endorsement. And she was particularly clear, councillors, that we needed cultural governance in anything we do on Aboriginal matters. And councillors, I do want to take the liberty of letting you know that I extended an invitation to Senator Lydia Thorpe to come to the city of Maribyrnong, which she has accepted. We hope that she will be the keynote speaker at the launch of our Reconciliation Action Plan over the next few weeks. Finally, councillors, in recognition of the realities of the past, we shall stand in solidarity with any Aboriginal person who wishes to contribute to the Victorian State Government's truth-telling process. We shall render support and assistance, though I think we would all acknowledge this will be a very difficult process. Councillors, I actually heard, and I don't know if others heard, Ian Ham speak on how he was a child of the stolen generation. Ian is a resident, councillors, here at the City of Maribyrnong. He was taken from his mother in 1964. A mother's loss, councillors, a child's anguish. But Maribyrnong City Council will stand with you as you tell your stories. We say this to Aboriginal people who may come from Maribyrnong to speak at this truth-telling process. Councillors, I see what our state government is doing, and I applaud Premier Andrews for his efforts and resolve in trying to advance a treaty in the state of Victoria. I can only hope that Prime Minister Morrison has the courage to address the truth of our history. Councillors, I commend the motion to you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Clark. Would the seconder like to speak to the motion?
Yes, very briefly. Councillors, I am pleased to support this motion, and doing so that I acknowledge the suffering experienced by Australian First Nations people and the grief and loss experienced by the stolen generations. I support the proposed broad engagement with the First Nation people of Maribyrnong and the wider community, and to inform them future conversation on how the Council should respond to 26th of January. I further acknowledge the Maribyrnong City Council history of the reconciliation to action which began in 1992 and continuing today to the development of the Reconciliation Action Plan, the RAP, and that will be considered by this Council later this year. I am really looking forward to hearing from our community on these important issues. Therefore, I am the councillor. I commend the motion to you.
Thank you, Councillor Lamb. Do we have any speakers for the motion? Councillor Crawford.
Yes, thank you. And I'll also keep it brief. I think it's been covered quite well, but I guess just to say that this is something that I'm certainly very passionate about, and no doubt all the other councillors are passionate about. The last council did go to quite, large lengths to, I guess, move away from the 26th of January, understanding the controversial nature of it. We didn't go as far as to, I guess, sever all ties, because we recognise that civic ceremonies, citizenship ceremonies are very important to both council and its community, all the new citizens that we have here. So we didn't take that length, and I think this is the next step in that process. So I think this is something that's really important for us to do, and I'm really glad that we're looking to do it. I also want to acknowledge the process that council has taken to get to this position. It could have, it's a sensitive topic. It can be divisive at times. It could have degenerated into a public mudslinging match, if you like, but we sort of had the maturity to work on it and to develop it into something that we're all comfortable with, and I think that's a credit to this new council. So yes, congratulations to all involved, and I hope to see this passed. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any speakers against the motion? Thought not. Any speakers for the motion? Okay.
Yeah, a lot has already been said. Just to follow up, first of all, I'd like to sort of give thanks, really. Give thanks, first and foremost, I think, to really our community in Maribyrnong. All those people who sent us emails and letters and contributed to this conversation, and will no doubt continue to contribute to the conversation. Also, particular thanks to Bernadette and Michael for pursuing, the conversations that had to be pursued, and for, helping to nut out this motion such as it's being presented today. I think we've already spoken today at the council about what is a council issue, and this is one that, for many may seem, or for some may seem, foreign to the 3 Rs, traditionally associated with council. But I think as much more than so many issues, it should bring home to us that people live on a street, they live in a suburb, they live in a city, but they also live in a country and in a culture. And that culture, that country, is woven through with stories and histories which are defining of people and of how they live and what they love. And in that respect, no issue has a bigger mark on so many stories and so much history in this country as this issue. So I think it's more than pertinent, really, that a council such as us should not only act like we are acting, but actually lead by a certain amount of example, really, for other councils. And I think, finally, I'll just say too, something that's perhaps not often touched on, but I feel especially close to, is I think we should keep in mind that the dispossession, the colonisation and the impact of that on Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people is something that's also felt day in, day out by another big part of our community in Maribyrnong, and that's the multicultural community, the people who've come here from other countries of other colours, people from different cultures, refugees, who feel still the impact of that colonisation in their own way. And I think that makes it all the more important, for us to take this issue up, given who we are as a city. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Any speakers against the motion? No. Any speakers for the motion?
Yep.
Councillor Thomas.
Thanks, Councillor Chan. I'd just like, I guess, to add to what's already been said tonight. It really was a collaborative, and it's been a sort of a few weeks long, I guess, process for us to sort of come to this final motion, and I'm really pleased that we've landed where we have. We spoke of leadership earlier. I think this is absolutely one of those issues where it's important for council to listen, but also to lead. And in leading, I think we really are recognising that hurt and just the genuinely ongoing impacts of dispossession, as Jorge said, that are felt across our community, not mostly, of course, by our First Nations people, but also by other people in the community who support First Nations people, but who themselves have also experienced some form of dispossession and hurt. So I want to thank my councillor colleagues as well for going through the process, for being consultative, for being collaborative as well, and I'm really looking forward to what comes next as well, because this is one step in the right direction, but we've got a long way to go, and I'm really looking forward to that.
Thank you very much. Any speakers against the motion? One last time. No? Any speakers for the motion?
Briefly. I don't think there's a lot more that I can add. I think it's all been said, but I too would like to acknowledge the maturity of this council. And it's still quite a new council in dealing with such a sensitive issue. I think, where we've landed and where we've come from, I think this is a motion that is more responsive to the sensitivities of the issue, and I think to lead with consultation is the best thing. We do have remit in the sense that January 26 we do host a citizenship ceremony, and there are those in the community, and it is quite divisive, that call for us to consider how we might recognise the trauma of past wrongs. And I think it's imperative that we do respond to that, whilst not demonising those who do in our community celebrate Australia Day. I think having the conversation is the most important part, and I think all systematic change, and the greatest change, is when you can bring people along, and you do that in conversation. You don't do that by thrusting change upon people, and you don't do it. Very, very rarely do people respond to that particularly well, or to be made to feel guilty about something. So I think education is key here. It is about the evolution of this issue. If we look to where we are now to where we were 10 years ago on this issue, we've come a long way. And particularly if we look to the youth, we're seeing a greater awareness there. And I think this will be something that it might take another generation for us to fully respond to this issue in a way that reflects or addresses those sensitivities. So I think, but just to, for a new council to respond with the kind of maturity that it did, noting that many of us have affiliations with political parties. There's no way getting around that. We all have different positions on that. But I think we're all in agreement when it comes to that we'd like to see change happen and that leadership happen at the national level. I am fully supportive of the calls for a referendum on this issue. But in the meantime, we can do a little bit to address, I guess, some of the angst that is in our community and the hurt, and some of the people that just don't quite understand yet the trauma that has been caused and what role that they can play without losing anything, without losing their pride or without losing their day. There is a better way that we can do this, and if we can kickstart that conversation, then I'm very, very happy to be supporting this motion, and I commend the Mayor and all the councillors for the work, and particularly Bernadette in consultation with the Mayor. Commend the motion.
Thank you very much. Any speakers against the motion? Speakers for the motion? Oh yes, I am a speaker for the motion. Okay, one last time. I apologise for keeping everyone here. I am excited, but mainly very proud of this motion, not just as a councillor, but as a young person of this community and as a person of colour. It's really exciting for me to see that there is this willingness from a grassroots level to have conversations that are very controversial, conversations that are very dividing, because these conversations, as Jorge said, are sometimes required, and it required a little bit of a push, a little bit of a stir of the pot for us to finally take action. Even though these actions are at best right now just words on the screen or words on a piece of paper, but there are actions that we can still take. It's exciting because it means that we are more than happy to take action on just more divisive, more controversial topics we're called upon. Topics that may divide quite a few people, but in the end would unite a lot of people in the end. Oh, I'm just so proud of us. But that's it. As a young person in this community, I'm proud to say that we've done such a good job in this, and to acknowledge Councillor Okeda for his work in giving us that little bit of a push, and Councillor Clark and Councillor Bernadette Thomas for, bringing us back to safety and bringing us to where we are now, essentially. So, any speakers against the motion? Okay, we have a motion in front of us, councillors. All those in favour? All those against? I declare the motion carried.